the great fundamental issue now before our people can be stated briefly. It is, are the American people fit to govern themselves, to rule themselves, to control themselves? I believe they are. My opponents do not.
In the American Constitution. I favor the American system of individual enterprise. I am in favor of protection. I believe in the permanent course and further limitation of armament. I am opposed to aggressive war.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes.
Whether we shape the future in the image of our hopes is ours is to determine by our actions and our choices. If we succeed, generations to come will say of us now living that we mastered our moment. Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
Leading the right out of the ashes. This is The Right Take.
Hello, everybody. How is it going? Welcome to a special milestone episode here, episode number 75 of The Right Take. I am Eric Lendrum, here with my co-host Jacob Grandstaff, as always, and we are continuing our elections-based focus for this episode, as we will be for pretty much every episode from now until November the 8th. And we've got a few more races to recap, some of the more interesting primaries that happened last week that are definitely worth covering before we move on to the main topic, which will be, spoiler alert, as you can probably already tell from the title of this episode, will be about the 2024 election. But we have to recap what happened last week. Some pretty interesting mixed bag results, and then, of course, one very, very big victory for all of us. Update for you guys. We still don't know what's happening in Alaska. Alaska is, I don't know what is going on in that crazy state, but they apparently have decided that it would be to their benefit politically to adopt a system that is reminiscent of the worst of the European electoral systems, in the form of ranked choice voting. They just implemented it this year to be used in these midterms for the first time ever, where apparently they have a blanket primary, jungle primary, whatever you want to call it, where all candidates of all parties run. And in this election format, the top 4 candidates then go on to an election where the voters get to use ranked choice voting to rank their candidates 1 through 4. And if, a certain candidate it comes in dead last out of this 4, then all their second place votes from that person's ballot go on to the various other candidates. It's so stupid. It's the dumbest thing ever. It's very similar to what New York City did with its mayoral race last year with Andrew Yang and all those people. And we remember what a disaster that was, where, among other things, like several 100,000 test ballots were accidentally counted in the original final vote at first. It's chaos, and especially in this era of ripe voter fraud by Democrats, combined with the geographic inconvenience of Alaska. It's the largest state in the country. It's half the size of the continental U.S., and so many of their voters are spread out across all these icy plains and forests and mountains and whatnot. It's just so inconvenient. I don't know what they're thinking. But from the ashes of this absolutely retarded electoral primary system they have there, we have so far in the U.S. Senate race Three candidates have advanced to the top four. That is, of course, incumbent Senator Lisa Murkowski, the rhino who loves to just keep voting against Republican policies for no good reason. You have Kelly Tshibaka, the woman who has been endorsed by President Trump, who came in second. A Democrat by the name of Patricia Chesbrough in third. And they still haven't called yet who is going to be the fourth place candidate. It looks right now, they have 82% of the vote in, by the way. And this was a week ago, and they still haven't counted all the votes yet. It's no different from California or those West Coast states where they deliberately take their time to count the votes because, Democrats always want to get the fix in before it's too late. But it looks like a Republican named Buzz Kelly is in fourth place right now with about 2% of the vote. But we'll see how that goes. Again, the goal here is to see Tshibaka ultimately beat Murkowski. But this ranked choice system, especially with the one Democrat in the race who's probably not going to come out in first, her votes could transfer over to Murkowski, and Murkowski could win because obviously she's a moderate. So we'll see how that goes. Even more confusing, we have the House race in Alaska. Of course, Alaska is one of the states with an at-large congressional district, meaning they have only one member of the House of Representatives. And for the longest time, pretty much forever, since 1972, it was a guy named Don Young, a Republican who was first elected during the Nixon administration, who died in office earlier this year. And the race to replace him, of course, we saw former Governor Sarah Palin jump into the mix, as well as a Democrat named Mary Peltola, and a Republican named Nick Begich III, whose grandfather, Nick Begich, actually served in this seat before Don Young, before Begich mysteriously disappeared. His plane disappeared. Obviously, it crashed. We can assume it crashed somewhere, but they just never found the wreckage or the bodies. So his grandson is now coming back as a Republican to try to win this seat. So the result, and it was made even more confusing by the fact that they have a regular election, obviously in November, but the day of the primary to decide the top four candidates for the general election was also the day they had the special election to fill the remainder of this term, so the few months left before January. And in that race, too, they have only about 82% of the votes in right now. They still haven't even finished counting the first round yet, let alone the second round, the transferring of votes and whatnot. And they said in the likely event that no one gets above 50%, then they will start counting those votes on August 31st. So we'll have to wait another week for them to even I need a sanity check here. Jacob, what's going on? Is this the future of our politics now?
I mean, at this point, we should have just let Russia keep it.
Let Russia be more than just Sarah Palin's backyard at that point. But yeah, in that particular race, on that note, Palin's not doing so well so far. The Democrat is in first place with 38%. Palin has 32%, and Begich has just under 29%. So, of course, assuming that the Republican voters who voted for Begich bite the bullet and decide to cast their secondary votes for Sarah Palin, that would then give her enough to go over the 50% edge and then win the general election. But general special election, that is. Again, they're setting a new top four for the general election in November. This is another one of those states that is just, they go red every 4 years, and I guess that's the most important thing. But man, when it comes to races like this, they really don't seem to have their act together, unfortunately. The one other state that had primaries last Tuesday was, of course, Wyoming. And let me knock out one smaller race here that's also really important before we get to the big one. A state representative by the name of Chuck Gray ran for Secretary of State. He previously was in the running for the U.S. House seat. It's another at-large district with only one member of the House. He previously announced his bid against Liz Cheney, but then ultimately decided to drop out when President Trump endorsed someone else in that contest. And with Trump's support, he decided to run for Secretary of State. And obviously, Secretary of State is a very important position given, they administer elections. And in the aftermath of voter fraud in 2020, that's very important. He ran against a state senator named Tara Nethercott. And although it looked really close on election night, Gray ultimately managed to pull off a roughly 8-point victory and is uncontested in the general election. Even in Wyoming, the Democrats know when enough is enough, and they threw in the towel. They didn't even run somebody in this election. So Chuck Gray is basically the Secretary of State elect at this point in the state of Wyoming. That's a huge victory, again, for someone that Trump endorsed. But of course, we all know what happened. One more rhino was bagged on this great safari that is the 2022 primary season. Liz Cheney. I was talking with some friends about this, of course, before the primary leading up to it. We were placing our bets. It was no question that she would lose. The question was how much. I went ahead and hedged my bets that she would lose by about 20 points, Jacob, because, of course, there was talk, there were all these articles being shared around that Democrats are going to cross over and vote for Liz Cheney to help her keep the seat. And I thought maybe that would play a role. I forgot how few Democrats there are in Wyoming. They're just as much an endangered species at this point.
I was about to say that you'll probably find more actual rhinos in Wyoming than you would actual Democrats.
Exactly. And that is why, at the end of the day, Harriet Hageman, former gubernatorial candidate who ran in the primary in 2018, where she came in third, she ran away with this primary with 66.3% to Liz Cheney's 28.9%. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a margin of victory of 37.4. That, Jacob, that's got to be a record somewhere, at least in modern times. Has there ever been an instance of any incumbent Congress member losing their primary by that much?
Yes, there was the one other one, the South Carolina congressman who lost in 2010. Remember, he had bucked the Tea Party, he had gone against the Republican Party, and he's now a regular on MSNBC. I cannot remember the guy's. Trey Gowdy kicked him out. Do you remember who Trey Gowdy beat in South Carolina in 2010? That guy, I believe, he lost by more than what Liz Cheney lost by. That
is a good question. I know that's not Joe Scarborough because he's Florida, and I know that's not Joe Walsh. He was Illinois. That would be, Bob Inglis?
Is it Bob Inglis? I know they have the guy on MSNBC and CNN. He's like the in-house Republican for all the liberal networks because he's the guy who, I think he voted for Obamacare. I think he was the sole Republican who voted for Obamacare, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, geez. Yeah, okay. The primary, it went to a runoff because no one won the majority in that primary. Trey Gowdy came in first, Bob Inglis in second. In the runoff, Trey Gowdy got 70.7 to Inglis's 29.3. That,
yes.
Wow. Yeah, a 41-point margin of victory. Okay, wow. Okay, so Cheney doesn't hold that record, unfortunately, but she does hold a record for 2022 because you said South Carolina, and I thought you were going to go with mentioning Tom Rice, who, of course, was the first pro-impeachment Republican who was up for re-election in his primary this year in South Carolina's 7th District. He lost his primary pretty handily to Trump's backed candidate, State Representative Russell Fry, who beat him by 26.5, which is also pretty big. But all the other pro-impeachment Republicans who've lost this year, Peter Meyer in Michigan and Jamie Herrera Butler in Washington, they lost by very narrow margins. So for Cheney to lose this decisively, it's a huge blow. Again, she had all these Democrats crossing over to vote for her. She had millions of dollars poured into her race by Hollywood. Kevin Costner posed with a really gay t-shirt saying, "I'm with Liz Cheney." They were going all in, and she still got absolutely nuked out of orbit. There is nothing left. Liz Cheney is gone. She is just basically waiting out the clock as a lame duck member of Congress now before the inevitable CNN contributorship. And I think most likely, again, this will tie back to our main topic real soon, the inevitable run for president in 2024 when she runs as a Republican, kind of like the Three Stooges did when they ran against Trump in 2020. But I could not have been happier to see this happen. And full disclosure, and I know our buddy Tom Pappard at Valiant News would agree with this take, Hageman is not a fire breather. She's not a Matt Gaetz. She's not a Marjorie Greene. She's not a Paul Gosar. She herself had some not great opinions of Trump in 2016. She was previously friendly with Liz Cheney. But at the end of the day, she saw the writing on the wall here. She saw where the Republican base was on Trump, on voter fraud, on all these other things, on January 6th. Liz Cheney going all in on the January 6th commission, probably above all else, along with the impeachment vote, really is what sealed her fate as just such an out-of-touch swamp creature. And Hageman saw that. So she's not another MTG, of course not, but she's not Liz Cheney, and that's good enough for me. Jacob, what say you?
Well, the charade that the media played in this race is unlike anything that the media has done throughout all of 2022. I mean, this puts, I'm trying to think of something that's comparable in 2021 to this charade this little love affair that they had with Liz Cheney. They sent so many reporters out to Wyoming to cover this race, a race that no one even thought was going to be close. Even if you got a hopeful liberal, sat them down and said, all right, I'm going to wager a bet with you. What do you think the margin is going to be? Even the most hopeful liberal would have told you, yes, Cheney is going to lose by 15 points. Nobody thought this race was going to be close, but yet the media covered it nonstop as if it was a close horse race. And it shows you the news media is not as much about defeating the Republican Party and keeping the Republican Party out of power as they are resuscitating the Bush Republican Party, resuscitating neoconservative republicanism, because they understand, unlike a lot of Republicans who don't really read history or follow America's political history, that the United States always has been and always will be a two-party system. It's because we don't have ranked choice voting that America can never be anything but a two-party system. And so the media understands this. The liberals understand this in academia. They're all pushing for Liz Cheney. They're wanting the Tom Rices and the Liz Cheney to the Republican Party to somehow manage to stage a comeback, because they understand that this is the only chance they have of regaining their power, because they can't have power if they're partisan. If they're openly partisan, they cannot maintain their power. They have to maintain the facade of bipartisanship, and that's why you have people like Joe Scarborough and Mika Kelly pretending to lean. Joe Scarborough calling himself a conservative and invoking Margaret Thatcher in defense of Liz Cheney and praising Bush, of all things. Like, these people are even going so far as to praise Bush, a guy they hated for 8 years. Dick Cheney, they hated Dick Cheney even more than George W. Bush, and here they are holding up his daughter as some kind of paradigm of virtue.
That is one of my favorite things, honestly. Yeah, I am just old enough to remember when Liz Cheney, when the Cheney name was just like the antichrist to the left. That Dick Cheney was a war criminal. He needs to be impeached, and George W. Bush needed to be impeached. They went all in on it. They unapologetically, and that was the big boogeyman for the left for a long time, was the Bush-Cheney foreign policy. But now that Trump has come along and is a bigger boogeyman, I guess, they have suddenly said, oh, no, we're cool with the people that we called war criminals like less than a generation ago.
Well, they have the same view. The neoliberals who run the media, the neoliberals who run academia, they have the same view toward Republicans that a lot of the Republican establishment has towards Democrats. The Republican establishment wants a center-right government with a center-left, slightly center-left Democratic Party that they can beat up on. The media wants a slightly center-left neoliberal Democratic Party that's always in charge. It always runs the government, always runs the bureaucracies. And then they want to bring on the, what's the word? Oh, yes, the principled conservatives that
TM.
can sit across for, exactly. That's kind of how they want the story of America to unfold.
But
I was just going to say.
Go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to say that they want, whenever they make their PBS documentaries on future presidents, they want the Republican losers to come to the table and discuss how great these Democratic presidents were for democracy.
Exactly. And it is really a matter of gaslighting the American people, too, to convince them that there is some semblance of a two-party system. Because especially when they have these people on, these Joe Scarboroughs, Joe Walshes, Anna Navarro, all these people, they bring on these networks, CNN, MSNBC, what have you, and they always say, well, I, as a conservative Republican, think this. They obviously, no one believes for a second Anna Navarro is a conservative anymore. No one thinks that Joe Scarborough is a conservative anymore. No one thinks Liz Cheney is a conservative anymore. But they still dare to go onto these networks and say that to create this illusion that, oh, we are from different parties, but we can agree that Donald Trump is literally Hitler. It's just so disingenuous. It's so fake. They hope that this Trump America First MAGA movement is nothing more than a phase. They hope this will just kind of fade away like a lot of populist movements have throughout history. But of course, they realize now it has a lot more staying power. If Trump was really not popular, if he was losing his grip on the Republican Party, Cheney would not have lost, or at least would not have lost by this crushing landslide. They know that this isn't going to go anytime soon, but they're going to try to convince themselves that it is, and to that extent, to that end, convince their handful of viewers left that is the case. And Liz Cheney, I just had to, on this one final parting note, assuming we're about to move on from this topic, Jacob, Liz Cheney, as I said earlier, I think she inevitably is going to join CNN as their resident conservative Republican, principal Republican, TM, before she runs for president in 2024. And I think more than anything else, this line, this absolutely incredible line from her concession speech on the night of the primary from Jackson, Wyoming, this sums it up perfectly.
The great and original champion of our party, Abraham Lincoln, was defeated in elections for the Senate and the House before he won the most important election of all. Lincoln ultimately prevailed, he saved our Union, and he defined our obligation as Americans for all of history.
So basically, she's Abraham Lincoln, Jacob. That's what she's getting at. She's comparing herself to the man who single-handedly saved the country from breaking apart in the Civil War. No, I mean, if nothing else, when I first heard that for the first time, this is just how much the paradigm has shifted, in my opinion, at least, the Overton window. I didn't even think of Abraham Lincoln. I first thought of the Lincoln Project, because that's obviously what she's going for. She's pandering to that Lincoln Project crowd. She's probably going to join up. I mean, she would join up with them if they hadn't already been outed as, supporting pedophiles. But she very much is catering to that crowd, which, again, is a very small crowd. They think it's a very large crowd when they have their little, think tank gatherings in D.C., but nobody takes that group seriously anymore. Why, have we even heard anything from the Lincoln Project recently, Jacob? Where are they these days?
Well, I mean, they've just basically gone full Democrat at this point. They haven't really. I haven't followed I haven't been on Twitter in over a year, so I haven't really followed them that much. But I'm sure if you looked at their Twitter account, it would just be Democratic talking points. They have pretty much completely given up. In fact, I did see a tweet by them in which they pretty much said they've given up on the Republican Party, like they're through with the Republican Party essentially.
Yeah.
But I do want to point out this little thing about her comparing herself to Lincoln, this is a new phenomenon. If you go back to even 20 years, 30 years, presidents, politicians, they did not try to emulate past politicians. They had politicians who were their heroes, and they tried to look up to. Ronald Reagan famously looked up to Calvin Coolidge. He also famously looked up to FDR. He didn't try to remold himself into the new FDR or the new Calvin Coolidge. The same is true for many other presidents and politicians. This whole trend kind of started with Obama, when Obama started emulating Abraham Lincoln. As much as I believe he took a train to the White House for his inaugural address to emulate Abraham Lincoln, and even followed the same path. Being from Illinois, being a senator from Illinois, just like Lincoln was a senator from Illinois, he wanted to try to copy Abraham Lincoln, be like the new Lincoln of the 21st century. Biden also tries to emulate Abraham Lincoln, but Biden tries to copy FDR. In fact, a lot of the advisors around Biden at the beginning of his presidency, they wanted to create a new deal for Biden to implement with, instead of having the CCC, the Civil Conservation Corps under FDR, they now wanted to create a new CCC, but for green energy, like for green energy projects. So
something like that,
around doing that. But yeah, so they wanted to try to recreate the New Deal for the green economy and all. So yeah, now you've got leftist politicians. They want to look back at their social justice heroes of the past and try to be just like them. And Liz Cheney is really, what she's doing is she's playing into what the media wants to hear. The media wants to hear her project greatness onto herself.
Yeah, and of course that is doomed to fail because, again, if nothing else, this will tease our main topic in a little bit here. A reason why Donald Trump was so great, why he succeeded so well in 2016 and as president, is that every Republican candidate, frontrunners and others in the primaries, pretty much from 1988 onward, all tried to say, I am the next Ronald Reagan. It was a Spartacus routine, like, no, I'm Ronald Reagan, I'm Ronald Reagan, I'm the next Ronald Reagan. Donald Trump barges into the scene, coming down that golden escalator and flying into the Iowa State Fair in his helicopter and says, no, I'm Donald Trump, deal with it. Like, and he was unapologetically himself, and that's why it works, and that's why it worked, and that's why it will work again. And again, we'll get to see that on display. I can't wait for that primary battle between Trump and Liz Cheney.
And that's what people want. That's what the people don't want someone who's been dead to be the president again. They want someone who is living. Like, people didn't vote for Jimmy Carter because they wanted FDR. They wanted Jimmy Carter. They didn't they didn't vote for Reagan because they wanted Coolidge. They wanted Reagan.
Exactly. You can only chase after the ghosts of past presidents for so long. And we'll see that come to full fruition in 2024, when I guess you could say Donald Trump will attempt to emulate a former president by pulling a Grover Cleveland. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here with that one. Let's move on. There's as I've said before, the primary season, sadly, for those of us political, aficionados like myself who just love this stuff, primaries are my blood sports. Primary season is winding down, folks. There's not a lot left. Today, actually, we will be having the primaries for Florida and New York, so those will be pretty interesting to keep an eye on. September 6th will be the Massachusetts primaries. I know, Jacob, you probably have some insight in that with some of the campaign experience you've had in that state. And then closing it out, guys, on September 13th will be the states of Delaware, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire. New England, I guess New England has taken it upon themselves to close out primary season this year. And Jacob, you wanted to talk about one particular primary race in the state of New Hampshire. What is that race, and why should we be focusing on this one?
So both of the congressional districts in New Hampshire are technically toss-ups, but I wanted to focus on New Hampshire 1 because it really is hard to believe, but Zoomers are old enough to run for Congress now.
Yes.
Like, that's just terrifying to think of. Like, Zoomers, like, when I started paying attention to politics, Zoomers were in diapers. This is terrible. It's just horrible to think of. But yeah,
quite a few Zoomers hadn't even been born yet, if we're being honest.
No, I mean, not for my political attention, but I mean, I started paying attention probably in '99, so the oldest Zoomers were 2 at the time. But I mean, yes, I mean, technically you could have paid attention that far back, but yes, so they're 25 years old now. Like, yes, they're going to be turning 25, and the New Hampshire 1st primary actually has 2 Zoomers. One of them is polling pretty low in the single digits. He's not going to make it very far, but another one is actually doing pretty well for herself. And she is no outsider. She has been in D.C. for, I would say, most, if not all, of her professional life. She worked under Kellyanne Conway. She was a spokeswoman for Congresswoman Elise Stefanik of New York. And but she's 24 years old. She'll be 25 this month. But one thing I do want to point out is that we've talked about this over and over again, is the Republican Party's message is not resonating with the base of Donald Trump because they're not mirroring the message that Donald Trump brought in 2016. And part of this is because they're still using businessmen as their base. Now, of course, being a former spokeswoman, this young woman is going to be extremely polished. Everything she says is going to be cookie cutter, pre-planned, written down, memorized 5 times over. However, think about what's wrong with it.
Karoline, tell me, as you've gone around the district for the last year, give me the 1 or 2 biggest concerns top of mind with people that you're reaching out to vote for you, people that will be your constituents, both the MAGA crowd and independents and also Democrats. What for folks in the Grand Estate, what's at top of mind for them?
Well, first and foremost, certainly the unmitigated spending down in D.C. The Democrats just passed their laughable Inflation Reduction Act, which we could talk all day about the fact that it's not going to reduce inflation at all. People are very, very nervous, and they're hurting because of the unmitigated, uncontrolled spending. We have a massive labor crisis here in our state of New Hampshire. Every business owner that I talk to, I'm the candidate most supported by our business community here, they cannot find enough help. We have restaurant owners offering $30, $35 an hour for a dishwashing position, and young high school students are not taking those jobs in our state. That's, I believe, a cultural problem too. We lack all sense of personal responsibility and work ethic amongst my generation, Generation Z, and that's an issue I seek to champion when I'm elected. But secondly, the border crisis is causing an unprecedented surge in illegal fentanyl coming to our state. We've been hit really hard by the opioid epidemic here. I have a lot of former colleagues and teammates and friends who are no longer with us because, frankly, they stuck a needle in their arm with drugs that came up from Mexico. So our law enforcement is really struggling to deal with that, and a lot of people are losing their lives. So it's my goal to be a champion on the issue of border security and speak truth to this. We might not see it in every state with the human impact of the illegal immigration, but we're feeling it with the drug crisis here in our state as well.
So that, of course, is Karoline Leavitt. With those of you who didn't recognize the voice, that is Steve Bannon on his podcast War Room. I had to make a comment real quick first before Jacob, the point I know you want to make. She starts off saying, the Democrats just passed their Inflation Reduction Act, which we could talk all day about. That's a problem right there, because she's suggesting, I could spend hours and hours talking about this very, very finely detailed economic policy wonk bill. I'm sorry. Snooze. There's a bunch of Z's coming from my head at the very thought of that. No one wants to hear about that. No one wants to hear nitpicking about, actually, the marginal tax rate will go up by 0.75% or whatever because of this bill. No one wants to hear about that. They want to hear about the issues that actually really affect them. They want to hear about immigration. They want to hear about culture war issues, critical race theory, transgenderism, the stuff that won the Virginia election last year, that led that red wave in Virginia and New Jersey across the country last year. No one wants to hear this economic policy talk, but she's suggesting already right there she would rather be talking about that.
Yeah, and it shows that with that the talking points that she's bringing are the talking points that the base of that is the donor base of the Republican Party, not the voting base, wants to hear. Because immediately after that, she goes straight into what the folks in big business want to hear, and that is the shortage of labor. She mentions that some restaurant owners are having to offer $33 an hour for dishwashers. I'm sorry, I don't buy that.
That's kind of insane.
Not in New Hampshire, maybe somewhere in New York City, possibly.
California,
some restaurant
maybe?
Maybe an upscale restaurant is offering $33 for a dishwasher starting out. But even if they are, isn't that a good thing? Aren't we trying to help uplift working people? Aren't working class Americans the ones who have been getting screwed over by this country over the past 30 years? I mean, isn't that a good thing that salaries and wages are rising that high? But notice her solution to fixing this doesn't make any sense. She's talking about how there's a labor shortage. That's one of the things that she's hearing most about. Well, I know who's telling her that. It's a lot of restaurant owners who don't like the fact that they now have to actually pay their dishwashers a living wage. So her solution to fix this is just to talk about how Generation Z is lazy, how Generation Z, her generation, doesn't want to work. So I guess, is she saying that she's better than the other members of her generation because I guess she does want to work and they don't?
Yeah,
good luck getting Gen Z to vote for you if that's the way you're going to insult them.
Yeah, you can tell these talking points. She did not come up with this. These were definitely
absolutely
fed to,
not.
These were fed to her by older boomer donors who look down on those lazy kids who need to pick themselves up by their bootstraps, and they're using her as their talking points machine to talk like they would talk. This is basically what some friends of mine refer to as a trans boomer, someone who is she's got the body of a Zoomer, but she's got the mindset of a boomer. She's basically like a 50-year-old policy wonk, lobbyist in the body of a 23-year-old girl who was a former Trump administration staffer. And it really is sad. Like, I don't like my generation either. Like, okay, believe me, I got lots of problems with my generation, the millennial generation, but I'm not going to turn around and insult them all and say like, I think everybody in my generation is lazy. Like, there's a lot of factors you got to look at here. Like, yes, you can argue that millennials and Zoomers are less productive. Like they're not as, entrepreneurial, certainly, as previous generations. But you also got to look at the fact that certainly the workforce and the state of living conditions, or the cost of living rather, in America today are substantially worse than they were, when their parents and their grandparents were younger. That you could talk about, you want to blame boomers. That's a different discussion for another day. But the fact of the matter is there's just so many factors at play here to just say, they're just lazy kids, lazy high scores, don't want to take these jobs. That's so watering it down to a very, very one-dimensional outlook that doesn't even come close. Like you said, it offers no solutions to the problem she's talking about.
And if she wouldn't, she's running for Congress to fix this problem. And I guess just to talk about it, and as if Zoomers are going to hear this congresswoman who's their age talking about how they need to go to work and wash dishes for $15 an hour instead of $30 an hour, so that's going to make them want to do it. But if we read between the lines, obviously that's not all she's going to do. She's being sent to Washington, D.C. by big business to what's the very next thing she talks about? Immigration.
Yeah.
And what does she complain about immigration? Does she complain about all of the poor immigrants coming over here taking the dishwashing jobs? No, she talks about fentanyl. Hey, the Democrats are all for stopping fentanyl. The big business Republicans are all for stopping fentanyl. What they're not for is stopping the flow of people. And
the drugs don't get across the border by themselves. The boxes of drugs don't grow legs and walk. They're brought over by the people.
Yes, exactly. So the fentanyl coming from China actually produces more fentanyl than Mexico, but the fentanyl coming from China comes through the mail. The fentanyl coming from Mexico comes being carried on the back of a person with 2 feet walking across the border or swimming across the Rio Grande. And this is the problem that the Republican Party has. Like, they're not addressing the immigration issue head on because big business needs the labor. Big business and even small businesses don't want to pay their dishwashers a living wage, because the reality is a lot of American businesses were built in an economy where labor was cheap. And to keep that labor cheap, big business and some small businesses and middling businesses, they sent people like this lady to Washington, D.C. to fight for conservative values when they really just wanted this person to vote for more legal immigration, because the more legal immigration they get, the lower they can pay their employees. And this is the thing that voters have to read between the lines to catch whenever they're sorting through candidates, because the thing is, like, the brain trust behind behind Ms. Leavitt, the brain trust behind these cookie cutter Republican candidates. For every one person who's a MAGA guy in a mainstream campaign, you've got 10 Frank Luntzes who are poring over the polling data with Republican voters, seeing what Republican voters want to hear. And they'll hit those talking points and they'll send red meat Republican voters' way. But then the people that the voters elect, they go do whatever the Chamber of Commerce wants. Now, I do want to offer this disclaimer. This is not a personal attack on Karoline Leavitt. This isn't even an attack on her candidacy. This is an attack on the brain trust of the Republican Party that continues to produce candidates like this and coach candidates like this to serve the Chamber of Commerce. Because we see how they reacted to Donald Trump. The same people are running the GOP, and they want to return to the Bush years. Now, again, lest you think that I'm saying don't vote for Leavitt, vote for her opponent. Her opponent isn't really that much better. So her opponent is a former State Department advisor in the Trump administration. If you look at his foreign policy page, not only is his website just chock full of typos, but if his foreign policy page is very clearly hinting that he believes that the United States should return to the foreign policy of Mitt Romney. All through this thing, it's deploring the withdrawal from Afghanistan. It's deploring the gutting of the U.S. military, as if Biden hasn't spent more on the military than Donald Trump did. It's deploring the loss of America's place in the world. This is not what Donald Trump ran on foreign policy wise. Trump ran on an American first foreign policy, not a globalist first foreign policy, not the post World War II international order that the Democrats believe in.
There's a reason why the line that comes to the end of our intro at every episode is that line from Trump at the 2016 RNC convention where he says, Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
And then if you look at the election integrity, by the way, this guy's name is Matt Mowers.
Yes.
Matt Mowers is Karoline Leavitt's opponent. If you look at Matt Mowers' election integrity page, nowhere does it even hint that he believes that the 2020 election was stolen. Instead, he says that he believes in demanding regular audits and real voter ID. He wants to work to strengthen New Hampshire's elections. He wants no federal election takeover. All right, we've got health care, covering pre-existing conditions and lowering prescription drug costs. Matt will always fight to ensure those with pre-existing conditions are not denied coverage from insurance companies. In Congress, Matt will also fight to lower the cost of prescription drugs. Affordable health care that puts families in control. Our health care system needs real improvements to make it more affordable and put people in control of their health care decisions, not bureaucrats. Mowers will always fight to ensure that those with pre-existing conditions are covered. And then the very bottom, get bureaucrats out of health care. So he wants to get bureaucrats out of healthcare, but he wants to make sure that pre-existing conditions are covered. How is he going to do that without a bunch of bureaucrats?
I had to say, by the way, I in reviewing the basics of this race ahead of recording this episode, I took a look at the list of endorsements for the variety of Republican candidates running this seat. There's 10 candidates, by the way, 10 Republicans in this primary. You take one look at the top two endorsements for Matt Mowers' campaign, Nikki Haley and Mike Pompeo. And I'm sorry, that tells you all you need to know right there, especially your point that like he very much sounds like a neocon, hardcore interventionist foreign policy. Those endorsements right there really just take the cake. Like that, you should be definitely judge some of these candidates by who they're endorsed by. And I think that is all. Anybody affiliated with Nikki Haley, I am immediately and automatically skeptical of. That's my policy.
Yeah, this just shows the sorry choice that a lot of Republican voters have to make in a lot of these congressional districts.
Yeah, polling in that race seems to suggest that Mowers is the front runner, although the latest poll has him tied with Karoline Leavitt. And most of the polls do make sure to note that the largest plurality of voters in that district are still undecided at this point. It's a wide open primary. There's no clear front runner. So this certainly would be a race. It's a month away now. This certainly would be a race that President Trump's endorsement would shake up for sure. If he came out and endorsed Karoline Leavitt, she would be the front runner. If he endorsed Mowers, he would probably win. Other people who are running, Gail Huff, the wife of Scott Brown, the former senator from Massachusetts, she's running in that district. So if Trump came out and endorsed her, she'd probably end up winning, plus the name recognition. So that's very much an up for grabs seat against an incumbent Democrat, Chris Pappas. So we'll be following that one closely and seeing obviously if it flips red, that would be great. But if the person who flips it red is ultimately just another shell for the establishment, the NeoCon Chamber of Commerce class, then is that really a victory? That's up to you guys to decide. One more point I had to make, though, what I'm seeing here, as you said, the talking points they're feeding this young woman who, if she were elected, she would be the new youngest member of Congress. She would be kind of like Madison Cawthorn. She would be 25 years old upon being elected. And like Madison Cawthorn, I feel this is their attempt. This is the party establishment's, the donor class's attempt to control the next Madison Cawthorn. Because you remember when Madison Cawthorn was elected, it was a huge upset. He ran against a woman named Linda Bennett in that seat for North Carolina's 11th district because Mark Meadows, the previous member from that seat, he resigned to become Trump's chief of staff in the final years. And Mark Meadows himself, President Trump, so many other people endorsed this woman, Linda Bennett, who went to a runoff primary with Cawthorn, which she then lost by a pretty large margin to this guy who came out of nowhere, this 25-year-old kid in a wheelchair. And it was very much an upset. I think you and I talked about this before when we recapped his primary loss. He very much was seen as stepping on the toes, or I guess in his case, wheeling over the toes of I'm sorry. He very much got in the way of the North Carolina party establishment, and they never forgave him for that. They didn't like that. So they were always plotting his downfall because certainly once he got into office, they couldn't control him. He aligned himself more with not even the Freedom Caucus, more like that fire-breathing brand of the GOP in the House. He aligned himself with Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene, Paul Gosar. He was very much part of that Turning Point USA speaking circuit. He was close to Charlie Kirk, who, of course, is undyingly loyal to President Trump, and they couldn't stand that. Again, the youngest member of Congress was not really someone they could control. So they went out of their way to ultimately tear him down. McCarthy exiled him, basically, and then they got him primaried out by some totally bland vanilla state senator. And this is their attempt to say, okay, if we're going to have another Madison Cawthorn, another super young member of Congress, we want to control her. We want to control every single talking point so that she is completely indistinguishable from a Kevin McCarthy or a Paul Ryan. And
they want.
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. I just want to say they want to create a Republican AOC that is controlled by the GOP establishment.
Yes. Exactly, because AOC, too, is another example, like Madison Cawthorn. She's not exactly controlled by their establishment. She's gone quieter these days, certainly now that Trump's not in office anymore. But you could tell she and the rest of the squad have come to a sort of mutual understanding with Nancy Pelosi. They're not at each other's throats in public anymore over issues like Israel or whatnot. They go along to get along at this point. AOC took a little while to learn that, but ultimately she has learned that probably to her political benefit. Now, again, someone like a Madison Cawthorn may have ultimately gotten there with, Kevin McCarthy and the Republican leadership given time, but the Republicans are not ready to take that risk. They don't want that to even be a possibility. And speaking of risks, it's time, folks. We are going to have this discussion. Not sure if it will be a debate, but we will see. This, of course, is the burning political question in America today. The question of American politics that is on everybody's mind, even ahead of whatever happens in the midterms this November. The question that will determine the immediate future of our country. The question that drives a lot of motivations right now in both parties, voters on both sides, and we have to discuss it. It is long overdue, and that is 2024, the presidential election that year. Will Donald J. Trump run for a second non-consecutive term in 2024 after his quote-unquote loss in 2020? Namely, the three questions, honestly. Will he run? Should he run? And if he were to run, would he win? I'll go ahead and start first. My answer to all three of those questions is yes, yes, yes. Of course, I'm sure that's a surprise to all of you. I am a huge fan of Donald Trump. I absolutely think he should run. He's the only one for the job. He will run. All the signs are there. He's just waiting for the right time. And I think, assuming we can start to get the voter fraud under control in the key swing states, which I think we can, I think Trump absolutely can win. Let me expand on that just a little bit. So, when I'm making my case here before the jury, that is you, our audience, I think he absolutely should run, because whatever happens with Biden, whoever runs as the Democrat, who is still undoubtedly the leader of the Republican Party right now? It's not Mike Pence. It's not Liz Cheney. It's not Kristi Noem or Nikki Haley, thank God. It's Donald Trump. And I would simply posit this very, very, very straightforward question. And it's not a trick question. There's only one correct answer. Is there any other Republican figure, is there any other political figure, period, but especially a Republican figure in America today, in the year 2022, up through 2024, who can immediately draw a crowd of 30,000, 50,000, 60,000, maybe even 100,000, given the big enough venue? Is there anyone who can draw that big of a rally crowd everywhere they go, immediately at the very mention of their name, than Donald Trump? No, there is none. Ron DeSantis is not going to fill stadiums, okay, as much as people may like him. And believe me, we'll get to the Ron DeSantis question in just a bit. Donald Trump commands enthusiasm like never before. He has, and many other people have said, presidential historians have even said, no one commands more energy and enthusiasm in recent modern American politics, in political history, than Donald Trump. Not even FDR, not even JFK, not even Ronald Reagan. This man has the most passionate, undyingly loyal political following in modern history. These people will wait days ahead of the rally to get in first. These people will crawl over broken glass and rusty nails in wooden shoes just to vote for Trump. And no other Republican can do that. That's just the fact of the matter there. Will he run? Yes, I absolutely think he will run. He's putting down all the signs. The answer he keeps giving whenever the question comes up is he always says, "You'll be very happy with my answer." He always says you'll be very happy. And we all know what he means by that. But also, just at the very simplest level of analysis, what is Donald Trump? He's a businessman, all right? He's a pragmatist. He's a practical guy. In other words, he's a smart man who has common sense, which, as my mom would always say, is something that is not so common these days. But he surely can take one look at the situation going into 2024. He will be 78 years old that year. You know, he's not getting any younger, all right? He certainly is in much better shape physically and mentally than, say, the current occupant of the White House, and he's probably in better physical and mental shape than most men in their mid to late 70s. But he's not getting any younger. What else is he going to do? Skip out on 24 and then wait to run in 2028 when he's 82 years old? Of course he's not going to do that. He's a smart guy who can take one look at the situation and say, this is basically my last chance either way. Win or lose, 2024 is basically his last chance to run for president. So for that reason alone, right there, I think he certainly will run, even barring all the enthusiasm and the demand, the desire among the Republican base for him to come back. And then will he win if he were to be the nominee? Of course, I think, Jacob, you and I can absolutely agree. If he runs, the Republican nomination is his. There's nobody who could take it from him, not even DeSantis. But would he win the general election? Yeah, that depends, of course, on who he runs against. If it's a rematch against Biden, assuming Biden's still alive at that point, I think, yeah, he would win. If it's against Kamala, someone as unlikable as her, absolutely, I think he would win. Against Buttigieg, he would mop up the debate floor with Buttigieg by the first 5 minutes of the first debate. I think he absolutely would win, assuming either we flip enough legislatures or flip governor seats, rather. Most of the legislatures in the key swing states are still red, but flip the governorships. Of course, that's my short answer, basically, trying to keep it as short as possible. Yes. Trump should, he would, and he will run, and I think he will win. Jacob, what say you?
The problem that the deep state, that is the bureaucracy in D.C., the permanent bureaucracy has, is that they run a government that is meant for a dictatorship, but they have to contend with elections. So in the case of Donald Trump, they know he is good. They've seen his plans. His plans have been published to completely overturn the bureaucracy, to actually drain the swamp this time around, should he win. So if you're coming from their perspective, you want him defeated at all costs. If it doesn't matter if you're in the State Department, the FBI, or even in the IRS, you want Donald Trump taken out. The only way to take him out, short of removing him, would be to have him charged and convicted of a crime to make him ineligible to run in 2024. So from that perspective, you can see why a lot of Democrats would want to run against DeSantis or somebody else, anybody other than Trump, because, let's face it, DeSantis doesn't draw crowds. He hasn't been tested on a national stage the way Trump has. We don't know what kind of rallies that a candidate, Ron DeSantis, would put up throughout the country. We don't know what kind of presidential candidate he would be. He was, just really an obscure congressman before he became the governor of Florida.
Yep.
So, there's the question of how DeSantis would fare. Democrats already know, that, at least that is the neoliberal establishment of Washington, D.C., already knows how they fare against Donald Trump, and they don't like the odds. With DeSantis, at least, it's kind of an unknown. So I think from their perspective, they would prefer DeSantis. And the raid on Mar-a-Lago really it kind of shot them in the foot, because they always overreact. This is the problem with neoliberals, and they're usually a little bit more tempered than leftists, but they too, because they're zealots in their neoliberalism, they too overreact, and this is what happened with the Mar-a-Lago raid. And now you have people who were, set on voting for DeSantis or anybody but Trump in the Republican primary that are back on the Trump train because of it.
Exactly. Yeah, that, of course, naturally, we had to address that topic as well, given that, of course, that happened last week. But in the most recent episode, of course, we recapped the Michigan and Washington primaries with our guest, Joe Enders. This is our first time even talking about the raid on Mar-a-Lago, which, yeah, I'm still kind of in shock that happened. I want to be in shock, rather. I guess I shouldn't say I'm surprised. We knew they would do something like this eventually. They've just been getting more and more brazen ever since the 2020 election, whether it was big tech colluding to censor him, and now we know for a fact big tech is colluding with the Biden regime, to everything else, the Russia hoax, everything. It was only a matter of time before they sent the feds to go kicking down his door and taking stuff from his house. Of course they're going to do that. And that in and of itself, like you said, not only did it shoot themselves in the foot, you have so many people reacting to this saying that the Mar-a-Lago raid has only helped Trump. And to that end, I actually wanted to play another cut here. I know I did my monologue, my very righteous rant a while ago about why Fox News is evil and needs to burn down. But rhetorically, obviously not physically, I'm not calling for violence, but there, of course, people will say, oh, there's still a few good people left at Fox News. I would agree, yes. I would say, along with Tucker, of course, and Jesse Waters, The one other person I would say who is worth saving in the lifeboat of Fox News is Greg Gutfeld. And I say that because I think more than anyone else at Fox, he best represents the everyman's perspective on American politics. And now he's not your average working class Joe Schmo. He is still, obviously, he's a Fox News host who's very successful, probably got a lot of money, but he just has this more laid back, kind of cultural libertarian dude bro attitude that is just like, he says more what we are thinking, what the regular American thinks about politics than any of his other colleagues on Fox News in their suits and ties and whatnot. And this clip right here from The Five, I think, sums it up pretty well from Greg Gutfeld.
There's truth to what he's saying. No matter how you feel about Trump, and Bill Maher can't stand him, he's a larger in life figure, and you just create more folk hero status the more you target him. He understands that. He's like a black hole that swallows all negative energy, and the angrier you get, the better it works. How stupid was this? It's like found money for him. Right? This raid is found money. He doesn't have to do anything. He could just pull back and just let this play out. He already looks like he was the victim here.
Exactly. That's so many other points there. That, like, the fact that, Trump didn't even need to post one of his signature 3 a.m. tweets about how outrageous this was. He could just wipe his hands clean, sit back, and let the optics, the image of these police cars with their flashing lights surrounding Mar-a-Lago, feds kicking down the door and wheeling out boxes of his stuff in the middle of the night. He could let that speak for itself, and it already has. And his popularity has gone up. Criticism of the Biden regime and the FBI has gone way down. Already, Jacob, is anyone talking about Ukraine anymore? Is anyone talking about abortion or Roe v. Wade anymore after this?
No.
Of course not. Exactly. And for the record, no, I know this is August. I don't think this will be the final big bombshell. This is not the August surprise. There's probably going to be something else between now and November. But already, this has now dominated the midterm election cycle narrative, as it should. You're now seeing more widespread calls from GOP leaders to either defund or abolish the FBI, which is fantastic, by the way. But I mean, when Bush left office, Obama spent a couple of years constantly invoking his Bush, not by name, to blame him for everything that was going wrong under his watch. But people weren't still kind of haunted by the memory of the Bush years. When Bush Sr. left office, when Carter left office, even Clinton with the scandal that plagued his last couple of years, when he left office, he faded from memory very quickly. Obama, the first black president who very much culturally began the shift of America, he very much helped fuel the earliest of the Black Lives Matter, critical race theory era. Even he faded from memory once Trump took over. Trump is still there, living in these people's minds, torturing them. It's like Steve Bannon said in his debate with David Frum from The Atlantic in November, right before the 2018 midterms. He said, Donald Trump will be living rent-free in these people's heads 30 years from now. And it's true. Trump will still be haunting these people in their nightmares long after he's passed on. They will never, ever really move on from the impact he has had on politics. And the best part of all that is that, my friends, is after just 4 years, after one term. Imagine what he could do with a second term now that he had an election stolen from him, now that he saw just how bad the deep state is, how much they completely stonewalled and obstructed everything he tried to do to implement his agenda, all the federal agencies. Now he knows what he has to do. We talked about it. We talked about the very big Axios piece a few episodes ago, Trump's plan with Schedule F, to just wipe out the federal bureaucracy and replace it with loyalists from all around the country, to relocate the headquarters of national federal agencies so that you're more likely to get working class, salt of the earth Americans to fill these bureaucratic positions and not rich lobbyists all centered around D.C. They know the damage he can do with the second term, and that is why they kicked down his door. They didn't raid Ron DeSantis. They didn't raid Mike Pence. They didn't raid Kristi Noem, because they don't fear those people. They fear Donald Trump, and that tells you all you need to know, I think.
Well, we've talked a lot about on this show about how the neoliberal establishment wants to create a Republican Party in their image. They want to create their version of the Republican Party, and that version is sort of like a Tea Party light Republican Party. I came across this article in Politico. The title of it is, quote, "We got rolled, how the conservative grassroots lost the fight with Biden because it was focused on Trump." I was curious. I thought, okay, so who is saying that we got rolled because we were focused on Trump? And I scrolled down. It turns out it's a quote from FreedomWorks. FreedomWorks is claiming that they just didn't have time to mobilize against the recent spending bill signed into law by Biden. They couldn't organize any kind of Tea Party movement because all the Republican activists were so focused on Mar-a-Lago. And it shows you what the neoliberal media actually thinks about the Tea Party. They never really were as anti-Tea Party as they made out to be. The Tea Party, something like that, is controllable because when you think about it, what does that movement stand for? It wants lower taxes, it wants lower regulations, it wants policies that will help big business, aka big tech. So
big pharma, Wall Street.
Yeah, big pharma. They can't control a movement that is based on the support of an erratic businessman who doesn't have any political background and really kind of follows his gut. They can't control that. If it's the Tea Party, then they can look at these working class voters and they can say, look, I know y'all are angry, but if you look at the policies that the Tea Party folks are offering you, it doesn't really give you much to work with. It's really just helping the billionaires, the millionaires. If you look at the policies that we're offering, you're actually going to be helped out. And in many ways, they would be correct. They can't look at the supporters at Mar-a-Lago protesting the raid on President Trump and tell them the same thing.
We talked about this before, the differences between the Trump movement, the America First, the MAGA movement, and the Tea Party, is that, of course, the Tea Party, for one, it did not have a single clear leader. You can argue that it maybe had its roots in the Ron Paul movement, and certainly it was born out of, again, opposition to Obamacare and wanting, lower taxes and, fiscal conservatism. But it never really had a clear message. There was no clear theme behind what they wanted to do. There was no uniting theme that tied all these issues together. Whereas with the America First movement, you have a leader whose name was already very well known, and you had immigration, protectionism, ending foreign wars. Those were the three big ones as far as I was concerned the first time around 2016. What was the common theme behind those? America First. America First, shut down the border, shut down immigration, put American workers first. America First, fair trade deals. No more free trade deals. We want fair trade deals. We will use tariffs if necessary to protect American manufacturing and costs here in America. And if it raises costs a little bit, it's worth it to boost American domestic production. America First, no more foreign wars. No more sending our kids to die in foreign wars to please the military-industrial complex. And Trump personified all of these things. He had been talking about these things for years. He was very consistent on them before he went to politics. Again, on trade, you can find videos of him in the 1980s talking about China ripping us off on trade. But he acted upon these policies in office. He actually did what he said he would do. First president since Jimmy Carter to not get us in any new wars. He began building the border wall and would have completed it if he was given more time in office. He fixed the NAFTA. He implemented USMCA. He killed the TPP. He got us out of the Paris Accord. He implemented tariffs that helped boost American manufacturing. He did these things. The Tea Party didn't really, even when the Tea Party produced one of the biggest midterm landslides in American history, gave Republicans sweeping control of the House and significantly reduced the Democrats' majority in the Senate. What did they do with it? What did they do? Jacob, they did nothing. They didn't stop Obamacare from happening.
I can't remember of a single accomplishment that the Tea Party Congress completed.
Not one.
They didn't do anything.
Exactly. Certainly not legislatively. The most you could argue for, and again, born out of the Tea Party, was the Freedom Caucus. And what is the Freedom Caucus's biggest achievement? They got John Boehner to quit. And we got Paul Ryan instead. Okay.
Yeah, Paul Ryan. No, great improvement.
A great improvement. Golf clap for you guys in the Freedom Caucus. Golf clap. So yeah, there's a world of difference, and a world of difference for the better for MAGA, for America First. Results delivered, a clear, charismatic leader who could deliver those results. And that's what you really need in a political movement. That's Bernie, for example, was a great example of a political movement on the left. You had a clear figurehead. He had a clear, consistent theme in his policies, $15 minimum wage, et cetera, et cetera. The only issue, of course, is the Democrats are much better at rigging their party's primaries than the Republicans are. Because God knows the Republicans had the capability to rig their primaries like Hillary Clinton did in 2016. They totally would have rigged it against Trump and given it to Jeb Bush. Going back to the DeSantis thing real quick, you mentioned, of course, Democrats see him as kind of an unknown, that they wouldn't really know what kind of a president he would be. And I mean, I'll agree with that, and I will add, the reason I got to knock down these arguments. I've done this in plenty of group chats with plenty of your friends who were on the DeSantis train. People love DeSantis so much because you got to consider he is governor of a former swing state that is now decisively a red state. He has a state legislature that is overwhelmingly for him. It has a huge Republican majority that largely agrees with his agenda. It's not a 51-seat majority like the U.S. Senate under Trump's first 2 years where, McCain, Murkowski, and Collins could shoot down Obamacare repeal or anything. he has a majority that will go with him to pass whatever he wants, whether it's an anti-CRT thing, what have you, a law allowing guns to be carried in school for gun safety. They will do it. He's able to do that because he is a governor in a state with a Republican legislature, and as governor of one state, that significantly reduces the pool of potential judges that could block him at every turn. When you're president, you can get any, judge out in Hawaii somewhere to block everything you do, to issue an injunction whenever you sneeze. When you're governor of Florida, a judge in Alaska can't rule against you. That's not how that works. So he's able to work without a judge blocking him and with a legislature that works for him. But also keep in mind, when he ran for governor in 2018, you remember this, Jacob, first off, this is one more reason why he really cannot beat Trump. He should not beat Trump. He ran in 2018 as a pro-Trump candidate. Remember, he had that video of him with his kids building a wall out of toy blocks. Like, he very much ran as, I am the Donald Trump. He was going to
build a wall in Key West.
Build a wall around Cuba. Yeah, he was going to be Donald Trump for Florida. And with Trump's endorsement, he won. But remember in the campaign after he won the nomination, Jacob, you remember, of course, he ran against that guy, Andrew Gillum, who's a cokehead, by the way, when he's not being found naked in hotel rooms with gay prostitutes. He famously...
I think he's in prison now.
Yes, he is. He's a criminal now. Imagine, Floridians got off so lucky. I have friends of mine in Florida who are so glad he won. But when DeSantis won the nomination, do you remember the little quote-unquote gaffe that he had after he won?
Remind me again.
Where, of course, he said, it's important we win this election. We better not monkey this up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Remember that? And the media went after him. OMG, he called his black opponent a monkey. He's a racist. And Gillum, of course, himself was beating DeSantis over the head with it. And DeSantis basically just curled up in a ball and was like, oh, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. No, I didn't mean to be racist. No, I wasn't being racist, I swear. And he just was on defense for the rest of the campaign, which is honestly why I thought he would lose. It was kind of a miracle he won, considering he spent the whole campaign just being badgered over the head with, you called me a monkey because I'm a black man. He still ultimately won, but he did not handle that situation in a Trumpian manner. Remember when the lowest of the low point of Trump's campaign happened with the Billy Bush Access Hollywood tape, and ultimately, a lot of people thought, oh, that's it. He can't possibly win. It's over now. What did Trump do in the second debate? He brought Bill Clinton's sexual harassment and sexual assault accusers to be front row at the debate, to sit right across the aisle from where Bill Clinton himself was sitting to watch his wife debate. That's not how DeSantis handled it. He only barely managed to win despite himself, in a bad year for Republicans, by the way. And even then, as governor, one of my coworkers pointed this out, he didn't really start governing as hardcore culture warrior, America First MAGA guy until after the 2020 election. Then suddenly, now he's banning critical race theory. Now he's banning transgenderism. Now he's putting guns in Florida schools. Now he's suddenly doing great things. He only started doing that after Trump left the White House. So why do you think that is? So there's just a lot of things to suggest, he's kind of a career politician who he may very well do fine in Florida, but you send him over to Washington with an evenly divided Senate or a small enough Senate majority where, again, Collins and Murkowski and a few others can vote down anything he wants, where any judge across the country from sea to shining sea can block whatever he does, he's going to have a much tougher time as president, assuming he wins. But more to the point, like you said, I think he's more of a career politician than anything else. He's not going to be a reliable outsider. And again, if people's argument is like, oh, just vote for him, he's a new version of Donald Trump, I'm like, why vote for that when I could just vote for the real Donald Trump?
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, I think people just assume that Trump would just kind of fade out of view and just be happy with being kingmaker. And I'm sure in the back of his mind, there's some part of him that would kind of like to do that, just kind of sit back in Mar-a-Lago and rule things from, I would much rather be in Florida than DC anyway. And I'm sure anybody else would as well. But especially after this raid and after the way that the media has not let up, the media has been continuing to act as if Donald Trump is the president of half America, as if Biden didn't actually win. I mean, for all of their LARPing about the 2020 election, how legitimate it was, they sure seem to act like Trump is still in the White House. And so the reaction of the media, the reaction of the deep state, and just, really the complete failure of Joe Biden as a man and as a president. I think at this point, Trump can't not run. At this point, he has to run. I think he knows he has to run. And I think if he runs, the way for him to get the Republican nomination is going to be cleared. The path is going to be completely cleared. You might have one or two people run against him, and the people who run against him will put up about as much of a fight as Martin O'Malley put up against Hillary Clinton in 2016. I mean,
Exactly.
That's what it'll be. It'll be a repeat of 20. It'll be like the Democratic. It'll be like the Democratic nomination of 2016 without Bernie.
Exactly. Or a better example, I think, much more similar example, like the Republican nomination in 2020. Like, Trump was the obvious winner as the incumbent president, of course, but you still had three people. Again, Trump called the Three Stooges so perfectly. You had run against him Bill Weld, the former Libertarian vice presidential nominee, Joe Walsh, former congressman from Illinois, and you had Mark Sanford, the disgraced former governor and former congressman from South Carolina, who ran against him, and they all got nothing. They got like 0% of the vote. It was completely pointless. And it will be the same thing here. Even though he's not the incumbent president, you'll have Liz Cheney run against him. You may have, I don't know, Mike Pence may very well run against him, but none of them will even come close. Trump will win all 50 state primaries and all the territorial caucuses as well.
Yeah, and the thing is, from the Democratic perspective, I think they really were hoping that they would be able to push Biden out of the way. They'd be able to get him out of the way and boost Kamala Harris. But Kamala Harris has become an even bigger disappointment than Joe Biden.
Yes.
So at this point, they're looking at the field and they're thinking to themselves, right, the only way that Biden gets a second term, or we're able to get a second term of a Democratic administration at this point, is if we run against somebody that doesn't have a loyal, rabid following, somebody like a DeSantis that you can caricature, that you can probably dig up some dirt on, that no one knows about, that you can present as because the reality is, like, the national media has not treated DeSantis the way they've treated Trump yet.
Yet,
so,
being the key word.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I mean, you don't know how that's going to go, and I think they're willing to go with the devil they don't know rather than the devil they do know.
Exactly. And that actually leads me to another point I wanted to make is one of the main arguments against Trump in favor of DeSantis is, DeSantis doesn't have baggage. Trump has so much personal baggage, not even the mean tweets, just like, again, past controversial comments. They say DeSantis is squeaky clean. Let them keep attacking Trump all they want, so then they won't have time to be ready to attack DeSantis. And I'm just like, all right, remember, I am old enough to remember 2012, as you are, Jacob. So remember, the nominee in 2012 was Mitt Romney, all right? Squeaky clean Mormon grandpa. What did they do to him? They accused him of being an animal abuser. They accused him of killing a woman with cancer. They accused him of basically being a secret KKK member / neo-Nazi. They still went after him and slandered him in the worst ways against this totally milquetoast moderate establishment candidate. You really think they won't concoct something up against DeSantis?
They dug up the 47% video?
Yes, that's right. That's right. They'll come up with plenty against DeSantis. They'll make him out to be, I could totally see it now, if DeSantis is somehow the nominee in 24. They'll say DeSantis is the Himmler to Trump's Hitler or something along that line. Consider this. I remember seeing this in a comment section somewhere on some site, I forget where, in the aftermath of the raid. I think it was on American Greatness. And the comment said, you got to consider that Trump is the most vetted man in the world. He's been on the political scene for 7 years now. He's been in public life for decades. Political scene since June of 2015, 7 years ago. They went after him with everything. The Russia hoax, the fake allegations of sexual assault. Remember that crazy woman, that E. Jean Carroll, who randomly accused Trump of raping her and then kind of went insane and started hitting on Anderson Cooper live on the air on CNN? Like, it's just weird things they keep coming up with. Ukraine, the first and second impeachment, even January 6th. None of it has stuck to him. And that's indicative of the fact there is nothing on him. If you really think, if they had something on Trump, something really damning, something of him killing a baby or something, don't you think it would have come out by now? Like, they would have had it by now, but they don't have it. There is nothing. But you can still have these political figures who may be squeaky clean, but then suddenly have something come up in their past. Like, who could have imagined that all three Democrats in charge of Virginia up until the elections last year all committed blackface when they were in college or something? Like, out of nowhere, this stuff comes up. Tom Pappard at Valley News talks about how Mark Kelly dressed up as Hitler in his college yearbook. Most politicians do have something. Madison Cawthorn, again, a very young politician, but some things never change. He had skeletons in the closet that did not take very long to find. DeSantis, he folded under pressure against the deliberate misinterpretation of a comment he made after winning the primary. Mitt Romney couldn't handle the pressure after the 47% video came out. He basically kind of gave up after that because he knew he was done. Trump can still handle it and will continue swinging and continue fighting. So just to close this discussion out, Jacob, you and I agree that Trump will run in 2024, right?
Yeah. I think he is going to run, regardless of how the midterms go. And even if you look at Ohio, J.D. Vance shot up in the polls right after the Mar-a-Lago raid. It's very clear that all you have to do to get a Trump victory is to energize the base. You don't necessarily have to win over a lot of more of the independents that are already leaning towards Trump. But yeah, once you look at the polls in Ohio, and J.D. Vance is doing very poorly after that raid, he shoots up. He's now, I think, averaging 5 points over Tim Ryan. So yeah, I think Trump runs, and I think the nomination is basically his for the taking. It's like no one's going to challenge him.
Yeah, nomination is his, even with a possible Liz Cheney Lincoln Project type challenger. He wins the nomination, and of course, the most important question. Again, I think, given the right circumstances, that's a big if. I think he wins. Jacob, do you think he ultimately wins if he runs? Or is it too early to tell?
The general election?
Yes.
It's kind of, I mean, it's hard to tell because you don't know you don't know the extent to which the deep state is going to go to stop him from getting into the White House. This is a matter of the entire military industrial complex not wanting anyone to upset their post-World War II apple cart. So it depends on how powerful the deep state is at that point.
That's true. Because keep in mind, with all the stops they pulled between the race riots and the COVID lockdowns, so assuming it continues to get worse, and again, inflation, what have you, more foreign crises if China eventually invades Taiwan and we have a repeat of Ukraine and Afghanistan, that makes Biden even look even worse. A variety of things. And again, assuming it's not even Biden anymore, it's Kamala, who is even more unpopular than Biden, is just wholly unlikable to people across the political spectrum, men and women alike, white voters and black voters alike can't stand someone like Kamala. I think Trump would probably easily win. He could very well win, but it's still a very big if, and it's too early to tell at this point. But sorry, DeSantis, you got to wait your turn. Again, you're a young guy, DeSantis. You're young, politically speaking. You're in your mid-40s. You can wait. You can wait until 2028. Your time will come. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the right take on the 2024 question. We thank you guys so much, as always, for tuning in. And be sure to follow us for all of our latest content, as usual, at our website, righttakepodcast.com. The full list of podcast platforms and social media websites where we are available, righttakepodcast.com/subscribe. And as always, if ever you guys are feeling oh so generous and want to continue supporting the show, righttakepodcast.com/support. We'll talk to you next week, guys.